Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Great group coming in. As you come in, please do work on renaming yourself as needed. If you can add in your full name, if you're joining us from a UWC school or college, you can add that in as well. Really grateful for the audience we have joining us here today, and we'll start as soon as we give a couple minutes for those attending to come on into the webinar. So thank you so much for joining us. It's a great group we've got coming in today. It's an exciting webinar. We've got students with us from 13 different schools and colleges across the UWC movement. As you come in, please make sure that you have muted yourself. And as soon as we can, we're going to get started with our amazing panelists today. Right. All right, we're going to continue to get people coming in as we start, but I'm going to go ahead and begin to welcome you all here today. My name is Laurel Ramirez. I'm the head of school here at UWC Thailand, and it's a real honor to be able to welcome our panelists today. As I said, we'll have panelists from 13 different schools and colleges, some of them joining on our panel discussion, others joining during our Q&A portion of our presentation today. So it's going to be a really interactive experience, and we encourage you all to interact with our panelists throughout the chat as we're going through our conversation and dialogue. If you haven't done so already, I ask that you please look at the name that you have on the screen, and if you can add that to be your actual, that would be fantastic, so that we're able to see you for who you are joining here on the webinar with us. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty sharing screen. Colin, do you want me to share screen? And then we also are going to be actively using that chat, as I said. So if you have any comments, any questions that come to mind as we're going through our presentation today, don't hesitate to pop those into the chat. Our panelists who are joining us today are going to be discussing the opportunities and challenges that they have as student leaders across the 13 different UWC schools and colleges represented. And then we're going to be leaving plenty of time for audience participation. So if you are interested in student leadership, maybe you yourself are an aspiring student leader, perhaps you're already leading in some capacity at your school or college, or you're a teacher or a parent looking to foster and inculcate leadership in your children, then this is going to be an amazing opportunity to hear from the voices of student leaders. And we're interested in any questions or comments you might have to become a part of the conversation. So please do add those in as we go through our webinar today. So let's get going at looking at who we have joining us on our webinar presentation today. From the campus, Colin, you want to go ahead and move to the next slide, please? We have a series of speakers joining us, and they'll be coming onto the screen in a spotlight feature as they come up to be presented. We've got Daphne joining us from UWC Thailand, Neela from UWC Dilijan, Julie from UWC Master, Mina coming from UWC Southeast Asia East Campus, Valeria from UWC Southeast Asia Dover Campus, Wora from UWC Red Cross Nordic, Sarah from UWC East Africa Arusha Campus, Aika from UWC East Africa Moshi Campus, Neo from UWC Mahindra College, Julian from UWC Adriatic, and Vasu from UWC Atlantic. So this is a true full UWC experience. More UWC schools and colleges are represented on this panel than we have not represented. And then joining us with some additional perspectives, we have Helen from UWC Chengchu China, and Abigail Owen-Kosi and Rashida from UWC Waterford Kamalaba, who are going to be joining us during the Q&A section of our panel discussion today. So thank you again to all of our panelists. We hope that you enjoy the opportunity to hear from them. And we're going to go ahead and jump in and get started. So as I've shared with you already, we are really pleased today and honored to have our panelists coming from 11 different UWC campuses. And we are joining together today to bring together student leaders across multiple UWC schools and colleges and engaging them in dialogue on the opportunities and challenges they encounter as they join a UWC campus and as they seek and build leadership skills. So the way we organize this with our panelists is that we're going to start by talking about some opportunities. And so let's start off with a question to get our panelists talking. So tell us, panelists, what makes student leadership in a UWC setting such a unique opportunity?
So I think I can start here. I'm Mina from UWC Southeast Asia East Campus. And I think there are many opportunities for leadership within the UWC community and subsequent opportunities that arise from taking a leadership position. And I think this is especially prominent in the UWC community because leadership is a very different experience. And as such, for me, it wasn't really about standing above others or commanding others, but rather learning from them and creating a supportive community. And I think throughout my leadership experience, I've had the opportunity to build my confidence and also learn how to ignite the confidence of others within a group to create a supportive, respectful environment that can often go a very long way in encouraging those who might be uncomfortable to speak up to contribute.
Hi, I'm Julie. I'm coming at you from UWC in Mostar. And for me, what made it really special to be in a student leadership position at UWC is how much leadership is encouraged at my school. In previous schools that I've been in, student perspective wasn't really taken into consideration as much. And now I really believe that student involvement in decision-making processes is really actively being encouraged by your school. And not only me as being head of student council, but also different leadership positions are being really encouraged in our school in different commissions and different subsections. So for me, that's what makes it really special at UWC.
Hi everyone, I'm Neela coming from UWC Dillinger, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how UWC actually provides such a unique platform for us to actually display leadership and work on our own leadership. And I think one of the things that makes UWC, and I'm sure this goes across all campuses, such a unique place to do this is that, you know, our unique cultural backgrounds and our experiences really have, they provide us with a variety of opportunities and a variety of perspectives that we can bring to the leadership positions. So for instance, in our student council at UWC Dilijan, we have 8 members all coming from 8 different countries, obviously. So we're able to represent the different continents, the different perspectives, religious, cultural perspectives in our leadership and have that dialogue also among the student leaders, which really allows us to have a more holistic approach to how we problem solve. And it's also really about learning from other people. So that's an opportunity that I really appreciated about the UWC leadership in particular.
My name is Sarah and I'm coming from UWC East Africa Arusha campus. So one thing that was particularly evident in terms of leadership opportunities at UWC EA is the fact that everyone is given a chance at leadership regardless of their socioeconomic background, which to be honest is not something that was possible when I was studying at previous schools. Additionally, this leads me to my next point that as leaders at UWC East Africa, we are given immense support from our peers, teachers, and people in the community. So like other people have mentioned, it's never like our ideas have gone unheard. And I think one really big aspect, which is very true to UWC, is that you're exposed to multitudes of diversity, which personally has allowed me to become more open-minded and also address greater issues in my community that I was not aware of beforehand.
Okay, so I can continue. Hi everyone, I'm Laura from Red Cross Nordic. And as you probably have understood until now, like all UWC schools greatly vary from each other, therefore the opportunities vary. And in RCN context, except like the naturally demanded student democracy and student council and club activities that are integrated in the academic program, we have many outdoor projects that require leadership. For example, in RCN, we have a project called Outdoor Leader, where first-year students are being rigorously trained by professional outdoor leaders so that they can take other students on long camping trips, hiking, canoeing, and kayaking to explore the Norwegian beautiful nature. And in addition, because of our relationship with Red Cross Nordic, with Red Cross, we have the chance to learn first aid, and the most passionate students are required or like advice to form a first aid student team, which ensures the well-being of other students until an adult or a health professional is found in the certain situation.
Hi everyone, my name is Daphne and I'm the representative of UWC Thailand. Coming from our school, I'm very proud to say that overall in our school, student leaders have access to a wide network of support, especially from our senior leadership team, that being our head of school, Kuru Rao, right here, the head of secondary school, or even the head of primary school, and other staff members. We can easily have conversations with the teachers involved and ask for guidance in whatever aspects we need assistance from. I personally have sought a lot of help from people around me during my time as the head of student council and also my leadership experience in other activities. And so I very much appreciate all the support that allowed me to reflect on my experience and to try to improve moving forward. And so it means so much for me to be able to provide that same kind of support to others, in particular, our firsties or grade 11s. And this is a bit unique to UWC Thailand MYP students. The close-knit relationship between the members of our community make it possible for DP and MYP students to collaborate, connect together, and mutually assist one another. And so overall in the school, there's an extensive wide network of support that people can rely on in terms of.
Hello, everyone. My name is Valeria, and I completely agree with everything Daphne has said. In UWC Dover, we also have a range of opportunities students are able to get involved with. But in terms of leadership, what makes it kind of unique is that depending on the situation, there's a different leader required. Sometimes you just need to be able to listen. Sometimes you have to be able to bring people together, and sometimes you have to be able to take action. For example, UWC Dover is turning 50 this year. So as leaders, we have been doing a lot of reflecting on our school's history, but also on our school's future, and how we as leaders can both look and acknowledge the past and use that to build a better future. And I think that kind of opportunity beyond generations is also something which UWC has, because you have such a rich alumni network and such a rich history to also be falling back to.
Hi, my name is Julian, and I'm coming from UWC Adriatic. And I think I agree also with what everyone has also said. And one of the really strong values of UWC is to celebrate diversity. And I think that this is extended to leadership roles. And I think one of the biggest evidences of this is how student governments and student leadership throughout UWC varies greatly. So for example, from UWC Adriatic, the way that we have 3 student reps varies differently from how UWC Atlantic may go about their student leadership. And this is something that is unique and very interesting about UWC, and it's how we're able to adapt and create new leadership structures where people are able to find leadership roles in areas that they are passionate about and find what works specifically for their college and their circumstances.
Hi everyone, I'm Neo and I'm from UWC Mahindra. I just want to jump in here because I think a lot of people have spoken about the value of diversity in UWC. And I think this is something that really resonates at UWC Mahindra, because I think the diversity of leaders and the project constituents are an amazing opportunity to get a diversity of perspectives. But I think it also is very telling of the fact that leading is a lot more about learning than it is about teaching. I think a lot of people have spoken about community-specific goals. And I think what I've learned is that you learn how to lead based on the community you're serving. And that changes based on which community you're a part of. And you learn to lead based on the diversity of experiences that you need to account for in the goals of the project. So that's kind of a general opportunity in leadership, but I think what's very specific to UWC is that the access to the opportunity to lead is not necessarily defined by your socioeconomic standing or your geographic location. I come from South Africa, and that is a country where leadership opportunities are very central to cities where you might have more platforms to lead. But it's also very specific to, do you have access to transportation? Do you have platforms to be a part of? Do you have the money to be able to be part of these leadership initiatives. So I think what's amazing about UWC is it takes away these different limitations and it gives students an equitable platform to lead. So we have a diversity of voices within the space of leadership.
Hello, I'm Vasu. I'm from UWC Atlantic.
Hello.
And sorry. So I'm from UWC Atlantic, and I'm talking about, I was going to add on to just sort of ideas of diversity as well, because at a UWC, it's hard not to talk about diversity. And it's sort of this concept that we all have our own perspectives. And in order to develop a community like we want at UWCs, a community is very important to us. And we can use leadership positions with our own perspectives that we've brought from back home to develop a stronger community. So for instance, here at UWC Atlantic, we have a very strong student council and student life council as well that are focused on using their perspectives with the people that they have involved in the council to develop the strongest community with the strongest connections and the best lifestyle that we can here at UWC Atlantic. And this idea of using our previous cultural experiences or looking at different perspectives in different ways, or knowing when to ask for help from our peers, especially peers that may have a different upbringing than us or different perspective and view to life than us, is really important to leadership. And that's something that UWC offers that I haven't seen at any of the other schools that I've been at. And I think a lot of my fellow peers can agree with that. And it's given us it's opened our eyes in terms of leadership is not just understanding what you want, but also understanding that when you're in a global community like this, and since most of the world is becoming a very connected and interdependent community, it's important to understand how to work with people from around the world.
Hello, I'm Aika and I'm from UWCA, the Moshi campus. And definitely the reference to the cultures is very important because personally, I came from a school, I studied in Tanzania itself. And because you get to be with people who you're from the same culture with, you honestly don't get to expand more. And being a leader in UWCA is actually quite interesting because you get to connect with people from different cultures who have come from different schools with different ideas from all types of ages. We have leaders from primary school to leaders in middle school, all from different places and with different sets of ideas. And I think what was most interesting within our government, a committee that is centered on just taking care of not only the physical, but mental health of the students within the school, because we believe that, of course, you have a strong body, but you should also have a strong mind. And I think that was very important and was very different from my old school system, whereby we just had different leaders for different things, such as, let's say, discipline leaders and environment leaders. But the fact, at least in our UWC school, they actually take initiative to take care of the students' mental health. I found it very interesting and quite amazing because we're able to talk to different people about different things, such as, let's say, consent. We're able to talk to them about, for example, now it's Black History Month. We're able to engage the students and talk about different parts of Black history and other events. And I just found it very interesting and very good to, thank you.
Thank you, Aika, and thank you to all of our panelists for sharing your thoughts on some of those opportunities that come from a UWC school and college. It's interesting to see Shrikant's message in the chat, because it's true for those of you that have not heard, we've, as a movement, been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And I think we can see today, as we listen to these fantastic student leaders, why there's consideration for that for the UWC movement. It's such a wonderful and a special thing that the number of times I heard you all speak to the reality that you had prior to a UWC experience when we're in our countries of origin or the countries in which we've lived, and we have a very unique experience that might take factors such as socioeconomic status into account that then limit our opportunity to lead. I think UWC really does do an exemplary job of providing equal access and opportunity for student leadership, which is such a beautiful ideal and really lovely to see modeled by our student leaders leaders today. So thank you all panelists for that reflection. It's been interesting to hear all of these reflections on the opportunities that a UWC education provide in relation to student leadership. But I know for those of us sitting here on the webinar, we're thinking, yeah, but there's got to be some challenges as well. So I know we would be intrigued to hear some of the challenges that you all face as you embark on student leadership, as we take all of those people from around the world and we put them into one location. There's a completely different location so often from where they've grown up and where they've lived, and that diversity collides. Can you talk to us a bit about the challenges that you might face as student leaders on a UWC school or college?
So I would love to take the initiative here. Once again, I'm Laura from UWC RCN. And as you have probably understood by now, there is a common ideology of UWC colleges, but as well there is the colleges vary from each other greatly, be it from the political environment surrounding the schools to the geographical or the resources that different school has access to. As many of you know, each college is situated in different country and built differently. So this is why the challenges are different. I'm not very familiar with other UWCs, so I'll give example from my own UWC, RCN. So we are in Norway, which really doesn't entail any political conflicts. However, our leadership opportunities may be slightly reduced because of the weather conditions or the fact that we have very small campus. So for example, last week we had a very big storm and we couldn't really go and have our outdoor leadership skills and projects. Therefore, we were more creative and we had some nice bonding experiences in the houses or other projects. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think I can definitely agree with that. In UWC, there is a very different context from other schools, and kind of adding on to that, I think there is the challenge of uniting opinions that may differ greatly from each other because students come from very different backgrounds. And I think what can be especially challenging with that is when there are certain issues discussed, which can be very sensitive for several groups. And within my community, an example is that as the chair of the student council, we organized debates about freedom of speech on UWC Day, and many different ideas came out of that. So I think being part of being a good leader is kind of taking on this challenge and learning how to respect these opinions to create change, while at the same time trying to connect people through their ideas and different perspectives.
Yes, I totally agree with that as well. I think one of the main challenges as a leader in general is dealing with people with differing perspectives and dealing with people who have very conflicting perspectives and finding solutions that appease and work to everyone within your community. And in UWC, that's very specifically hard because there's so much diversity and a lot of people come from very differing backgrounds and come with very different perspectives. And I think one of the most important things in being a leader in UWC is to be culturally sensitive and culturally aware and to understand the different backgrounds that people come from in order to understand their perspectives and therefore have more constructive dialogue and create better solutions that work for your entire community.
Yeah, hi again, Neo from Mahindra. I really resonate again with what Julian said. And I think while all of us have highlighted the idea of having diverse experiences and perspectives to account for as an opportunity, it is also quite challenging because you need to address and accommodate the unique challenges of your community while being cognizant of the cultural context, both on your campus, but also in the country that your campus is in. So I'll give an example from, the campus on which I live, which is Mahindra, which is in India. So I lead a project called Amavasya, and it originally started out as kind of wanting to make menstrual products more sustainable, wanting to introduce more sustainable menstrual habits, both on and off campus. But what we quickly realized, we're in a valley in quite a rural part of India, and we realized that there wasn't sufficient access to regular menstrual products like pads. So it wasn't fair to necessarily expect people to convert to like sustainable options like menstrual cups, things like that, because those solutions were not fitting both the accesses and the priorities of the local community at that time. So what we ended up doing is adapting the project to create a Men in Menstruation campaign where we spoke with local men about the stigma surrounding menstruation. Obviously, it's not happening right now with COVID, but one day, hopefully. And what I think I learned from that experience is you really need to realize as a leader when it's your turn to speak and when it's your responsibility to listen, because we're all coming from such different backgrounds that, you know, my solution that would be applicable in my country isn't necessarily locally relevant. And I can't enforce my ideas blindly without understanding what I'm expecting from the people I'm asking to adapt to like my ideas and whether those expectations are fair or not.
I can
Hello.
take it. Oh,
so some of the challenges that we do. So in our school, some of the challenges that we do face is like how to find a common ground between how the government wants us to operate and how we want to operate. I think, as most of us know, most African countries are very conservative in different ways. So things just as, let's say, presenting an LGBTQ flag in one of the classes, or people dressing androgynously, it's something that cannot be displayed that as often as people want to, or as openly as people want to, because of how the government operates. So it's quite hard to find like a common ground in people themselves who exist in these kinds of communities. And like something as simple as, let's say, males wearing nail polish. It's something that from the beginning, as you join the school, you're told to actually like be careful with as you go out into the community because of how the environment is. And so that is quite a difficult thing that we do face in our community. And another thing is just how to find a common ground within, given the wide variety of people from different places within the school, because we all have different perspectives, we all have different backgrounds, we all have different opinions. And there are times when you might find that because there's sometimes an unbalanced sense of diversity, in the sense that you might find that in the school's population, there are more people from, let's say, one ethnic background than from another. There are more people from, let's say, a European background than people from another type of background. Personally, in my school, though we do have people from, let's say, an African background, most of the people are from East Africa. What about parts from North Africa, Central Africa, South Africa? There aren't as many people. And even Europe itself, people from Asia, people from North America. So I just think that as a UWC community, we should work towards, if not establishing more national committees in like other countries, we should also work to know how to balance out the students and how they're spread out throughout the world. Because honestly, though there is presence of like groups and there is a sense of belonging to a type of group, but when that group is, let's say, less than another group, or said minority, it is hard for said people to speak out because they do know that there might be greater opposition, or let's say they might be seen as the black sheep of the school. So I do think that as UWC leaders as a whole, this is something that we do experience, and it is something that we can take steps into resolving.
Hello, everyone. Valeria. I completely agree with everything Aika has been saying. UWC doesn't exist in this bubble from the community or the context it is in. It is rather directly impacted by it. So for example, in Singapore, there's actually laws which criminalize male homosexuality. So it's like a challenge is with that legal landscape, how do you make LGBTQ plus students feel comfortable on campus, given that that is what's happening within the wider community? So it's really about finding a balance between both acknowledging wider problems, but making everyone comfortable. So like a project that Student Council within UWC Dover has been working on is like dedicating a set of stairs to the trans flag, just to really visualize and make people realize that this space should be welcoming to everyone. So I think it's like sometimes it's just the little things even that can create a butterfly effect and allow people to be comfortable within our campus.
Hello, everyone again. I'm Nila from Dilija. And I think very much in line with what everyone else is saying, you know, the local issues that we face as UWC students in 18 different countries across the world. I want to talk a little bit about what happens when issues from the real world or situations actually translate into the UWC atmosphere, and how that provides unique challenges for us in terms of the perspectives that we have to then manage. For instance, a personal example that we have here at UWC Dilijan is the ongoing conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh or Artsakh, which is a disputed territory between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And in October, November of 2020, so during my first year, we actually had a re-inflammation of that very conflict. So for several months, we were confronted with that topic every day. And as student leaders, we were in a difficult position of supporting not only our Armenian students who had friends and family on the front line, who hadn't heard from them for several days at times and weren't sure if they were still alive, while also mediating between our Turkish and Armenian students, and also addressing the refugee situation. We had a refugee influx in our very small town of Dilijan. So those are all real life situations that we have to address in a UWC context. That you would not ever ordinarily be exposed to in our home countries. And as student leaders, we then are faced with having to find a way that works for everyone, and in very, very difficult and emotionally charged situations, finding a way to mediate, and also by standing by our UWC mission, which obviously stands for peace and intercultural understanding, but also understanding that when people are personally invested in these situations, it is often quite hard to stay neutral. And then finding a way to make that work. And as I said, mediate between all.
Everyone else's points, I do agree that the challenges faced in UWCs is definitely based on geographic location. For example, here in Tanzania, despite efforts, there is very little access to technology and internet in rural areas. Therefore, this is usually a limitation when we do take on issues in local settings. And in local settings. Despite growing up in Tanzania and having a good knowledge of the Swahili language, there are we go to more rural areas. We cannot communicate with people. Like, for example,
I think we maybe have dropping off a bit with her internet. Daphne, did you want to jump in?
Yes, I would like to agree with the points that everyone has put forward, and I also want to agree with Valeria about certain of our activities and our scope of actions being restricted by the laws of our country. An example of that in UWC Thailand is when we're trying to push forward for gender neutral facilities, and then we have to find ways to balance between abiding with Thai law, which specifies that students have to live in gendered specific dorms, and trying to make everyone on campus feel comfortable. And it's something that we as a student body, in line with our teachers, are still trying to achieve. So that's an ongoing challenge that UWC Thailand would like to address in the future. And also adding on to what Neo has touched on, I just want to provide some extra light into the difficulties in terms of logistics and resources that our schools might face due to its location. An example on top of my head is 24-hour race, which is happening this weekend in UWC Thailand. My friend is the head organizer of it, and so since it's such a big event, a lot of things, logistics needs to be sorted out, even smaller tasks like ordering t-shirts for runners and organizers. And so being from the more remote part of the island doesn't make it easier for us. I've lived in a big city my whole life, so I can see how the lack of access to basic services like frequent transportation or mass manufacture can be a challenge to any large-scale project. However, the challenge is also an opportunity for us to be more flexible in terms of our leadership and move outside of our comfort zones in a way that we never thought of before. It requires us to be more organized and be more thorough. So I think it's also something good to take out of such a challenge. So since these things are kind of out of our control, we normally don't want to dwell too deep into them, but figure out solutions to move forward.
Hi, this is Julie from Mostar again, and I would like to talk about one of the challenges that we face in our school when it comes to student leadership as well, is that we have an open campus, so our city is our campus, is what we like to say, which is, of course, a really big opportunity for us to get to know the city and all of these great things, but it also comes with some issues such as communication within our student body can be quite challenging sometimes. We live in different residences across the city, and that can be quite difficult if you don't necessarily see all the time all the people that are in your school. So it can be quite difficult, but that also comes into play with the local community, is that sometimes what other people are referring to as well is that we don't live in sorry. So especially our school can sometimes struggle with the fact that we always kind of have communication with members outside of our school community. And especially with COVID in our pandemic, that was hard for us, being an open campus and how to get all of the things that we wanted to create, activities that we wanted to create in times of our pandemic. So those are some struggles that we are facing within student leadership in Mostar.
I think one more thing that's important to remember, especially in terms of leadership and some of the challenges that you can face, are, as a lot of people mentioned, limitations. Yes, we are a system that has so many diverse cultures represented. It's important to remember that people have their own personal opinions as well. Even in leadership positions, we're still students and we're still learning what it means to be effective and good leaders. And so we may have moments where our personal opinions or our personal bias overcomes what may be the best option. So understanding when to ask for help is something that we're still learning, and I think is a challenge for a lot of student leaders. I've seen experiences here where student leaders at UWC Atlantic may not understand their own limitations as someone who's still learning, and someone else may have a better perspective of how to do something more efficiently or find a better solution for a problem. But when you ask for help and when you get these different perspectives involved and you understand how to incorporate the entire community into a decision, especially in a school where the community means so much, UWC is without a community aspect would be something very, very different. And since community is so important, it's important to understand how to incorporate them into the decision and not just make the decision based off of who's in the leadership positions or who the decision is being made, who the appeal, if you're appealing like a solution to something, is being made to. It's important to understand our own limitations as still growing leaders and students. And in addition to that, it's really also important to understand our local settings. As a lot of people have mentioned, local settings play a big role in what we're actually physically allowed to do. And that varies from place to place. But in the end, the leadership experiences and skills stay the same as long as we understand how to apply them to where we are.
That's really beautiful, Vasu. Thank you so much. I don't know about the rest of you on the call, but it just fills my heart with joy to hear these young people speaking so eloquently about opportunities and challenges in leadership. Is just really wonderful. We have a few other students who have joined us, and as we transition into a bit more of the Q&A section of our webinar today, I encourage those of you who haven't already to go ahead and pop your questions into the chat. And while we're gathering those questions in the chat, I'd like to invite Helen from Changshu, China to hop in on the call. Thank you so much for being here today, Helen. Helen is a student leader coming from our UWC campus in China. Helen, is there anything you would like to share about opportunities or challenges that you have faced or that you've seen peers in China face regarding student leadership?
Well, so thank you for introducing me. So as I heard, many people has mentioned about how their locations and some special placement of their campus, how it impacts them. And I think it's very the case for China because you see, we have those COVID regulations that refuse international students. So we're the very few campuses who really don't have these people from all around the world to share us their thoughts. And it's a very huge lack of diversity. It's something that all of our students are concerned at, and we really need external help. And in addition to that, as for students leadership, I really agree with the point that being student leader doesn't mean you are the boss. You judge people and you make decisions. It is more about, like what Chinese philosophers usually say, the act of not acting. It is about learning what people really need. It's about listening to the school. Why does school make this decision? And then it's about, then how can I change this decision, or how can I make minor changes that wouldn't impact, that wouldn't have too much of a negative impact, and really twist the decision into something that students are also happy about. So it's about more like a art of acting, of considering different stakeholders, than just standing up and making a decision. So I think that's my point at this.
Thank you so much, Helen. And I'd also like to invite onto the call, I think we have 3 students, if I'm not mistaken, joining us from the Waterford campus. And so Abigail or Owen Kosi or Rashid, if you would like to jump in right now, I invite you to join in on the conversation, coming from a perspective from Waterford. And I see Patricia here on the call as well, the head of college there at Waterford. Welcome to join in as well. What do you all see as opportunities and challenges on your campus?
Hi everyone, my name is Abigail. I'm Ugandan, but I currently attend UWCSA in Waterford. So an opportunity for being a leader was basically having such wide access to so many people. We have such young students coming in as well. So like you have so many African perspectives as well, so many European, so many like Asian people coming together as one. And I think that creates a lot of smaller groups as well. So we're not just like one SRC. We have Link Group, we have Africa Week, we have Asia Week, we have Europe Week, that kind of come together like a whole year of calendars and events just for us to like enjoy. And I think a challenge mainly is that because we have so many people and we have so many students, the IB and the UWC spirit kind of gets concentrated into like IB only, IB1, IB2. But like from 1 to from 5, trying to like bridge the gap, we call the form and IB bridge, trying to make that bridge a little smaller, a little more cohesive, everybody to enjoy, so that we don't make it an IB thing only. So that's like one of our many like challenges in trying to like make sure everyone from 1 to IB2 as well is involved in this whole UWC spirit. So yeah, it's one of our challenges.
Oh, and Kosi or Rashid, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm Rashida. I'm from Bangladesh. I'm going to UWCSA. And just to add to Abby's fact that it is always a challenge to have so many students to work with and to have each of them equally listened to, equally represented. And yeah, it's also a limitation, as so many of the other panelists have already mentioned, to have so many different perspectives and opinions on how to deal with the situation. And just to account for all of those and to listen, and yeah, we try, but yeah, that would be our perspective on it.
Thank you so much. So jumping into some of the questions that we've got in the chat, we have a question coming to any of our panelists who might feel inspired to answer. There's been a lot that you all have shared about kind of the power of the diversity on your campuses, but also how that can be a challenge as you move into leadership. So wondering specifically if anyone has anything to share about how it is that your community helps people to be more open-minded and able to consider those multiple and diverse perspectives. How do you do that? You know it's important, but how do you actually achieve it? Anyone want to jump in on that answer?
I think I have a few points on that. So one thing I think is that's a very practical solution to that is we're sort of just thrown into, especially right now with COVID, we're thrown into moving into our houses, and with isolation, we spend either 10 to 14 days stuck in our student houses, but we get to meet the new first years, or if we're first years, we get to meet the second years and our fellow first years, or if there's new second years that have arrived, second years get to meet them. And it's sort of this 14 days where you're limited to about the 50 people in your house. So you're not thrown straight into the deep end and have to meet all 360 people at the same time, but you get to meet 50 people who are still from a very diverse set of backgrounds and communities, and you get to introduce yourself to them, understand what it's like to interact with people from around the world, and then you get pushed out after isolation and you go to classes where it's just the sort of living with people by itself gives you that opportunity to learn how to be open. Let's say you were a closed off person before you came, you didn't understand different perspectives, or you may not be appreciating them as much. You slowly learn how to do that just by the fact that your roommate may have a completely different perspective than you. And it's not that your roommate is a bad person. You eventually grow to open up to those different perspectives that they may have. So it's the idea of living there with other people.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that boarding aspect of UWC schools and colleges is quite unique and offers great opportunity, Vasu. Thank you for that. Neo, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, just two quick things. The first I would add is that I think UWC is not necessarily a space in which that has ever been that much of an issue, because I feel like the selection process focuses on students who are very open to different perspectives. So I would say in that sense, I don't know if it's that much of like a simulation of the outside world in a sense. I don't think many campuses have experiences where they have students that hectically clash with one another, but obviously it does happen. And I would say in that situation, the main approach is just kind of representation of different ideas. The approach to like having an opinion should never be, I'm having this opinion so that other people can think in the same way. I think it's about, just having lots of avenues by which to express it. So one thing we have at Mahindra is we have global affairs, where we often have like different global issues every second week. And we often invite students from those regions to share their perspectives. And we have had them on, very sensitive topics where we've had students on both sides kind of discuss their opinions. But I think at the end of the day, it's mostly just about reflection. And I think oftentimes the result is just, it's not necessarily ever agreement, and that's not what we're looking for either. It's just that you're giving students a platform to understand both perspectives from people who have those lived experiences, and what they do with that information is up to them.
That's wonderful, Neo. Wada, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would love to elaborate a little bit more on giving a student platform to understand the different perspectives. So for example, what we did in RCN was to have a thing called life skills in first year. So essentially it's meetings every week for the first term of your first year, where we have different presentations and group work about how to have nonviolent communication, or about different perspectives, how culture may contribute to broadening our perspectives, but as well to conflict, and how we have to live with that. Like, yes, there will be conflicts and they will be resolved, but at the same time, we need to be comfortable with being in that conflict and moving forward and like gaining more perspectives, because that's the only way to do it.
Absolutely. You can't shy away from it. So we have a question from, it looks like a teacher coming to us from Malaysia, interested in starting up a leadership program from scratch. So far focusing on conflict resolution, peer mediation, and maybe some small wins that provide agency. From our student leaders here on the call, do you have any advice on where to maybe take that student leadership program from there?
I maybe have some advice. At UWC Adriatic, we have a program called Peer Supporters, which are a group of second-year students who are able to host well-being workshops once every week with the first years. And in this program, they're also given training on conflict resolution, peer support, how to better give advice as a peer supporter, as well as learn specific workshops that they do to the first years, which involve consent, involve sexual health, and more things, and just living generally in a college life. And I think that programs such as that is really beneficial for creating conflict resolution and learning peer support within a college community. And this can be done by also just, oftentimes it's best to be done by adults who have experience. Usually the peer supporter trainings are done by our school therapist, who is able to have the resources to properly teach and help other students to become better peer supporters. So, yeah.
Those are great suggestions, Julian. Thank you so much. Valeria, do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, so I think leadership, we've kind of discussed this, but sometimes you kind of learn how to do it by doing it. It's not really this like strict rule book that you're handed and it's like a blueprint for how to deal with challenges when they arise. So I think the idea of like getting students to plan things is a really good one. At UWC Dover, we also try to foster leadership in kind of like unconventional settings. So not only looking for the loudest voices and assigning them as leaders, but kind of starting really young in young classroom settings and building up opportunities for people. So like as student council, we actually collaborate with like the primary student council, and they can sit they sit in on some of our meetings and they just look how things go, just so you get kind of a sense and you can also build a next generation of leaders.
Oh, I love that, Valeria. Thank you so much. What up?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what Valeria said. Leadership is a very personal thing and everyone has different ideas of what leadership means. So that's why I feel that it's very important when we build a leadership program to have at least one session where everyone has like a discussion or written down a definition of what leadership is in their eyes. So maybe we have a common understanding. This will probably reduce conflicts along the line of about responsibilities and accountability of the people who are in leadership position.
Wonderful, Wada. Thank you. Vasu, what would you suggest?
Just adding on to what Julian said, here at UWC Atlantic, we also have a system called peer listeners, who are basically second-year students who've also been trained to help support anyone on campus. It can be from the smallest things to the biggest things. And that sort of helps with the peer mediation and sort of ideas of conflict resolution. And in addition to that, to give everyone an equal opportunity to participate in leadership, at the very beginning of the year, we give workshops on how interactions with students should work, the importance of having a strong community. And I think a very, very important aspect, and especially student leadership, which I've seen between two different international schools that I've been to. At one school, we had no community development. It was sort of each leader is just their own leader because they got elected. They said, vote for me because I'll do this. Versus here at UWC, it's not vote for me because I'll do this. These are the perspectives I have. This is why I want to do this. And this is how I plan to do this. Except this, none of this is like, it's set in stone. If you have any advice, I would just completely throw away my plans because your ideas may be better than mine. And I think that's also something important that, especially at the beginning of developing leadership, is important to understand that we all have personal bias and personal opinions, but in the end, as a leader, you have to put other people first as well. And understanding that is super important.
That's wonderful, Vasu. Thank you so much. Abigail from Waterford, and then we'll hear from Neela at Dillajan.
In terms of what Ms. Kaur said about the small wins, I think the best thing about being a leader is not having all the formalities. So I would suggest maybe cutting back and having really formal structures and just allowing students to propose an idea that they're really passionate about. So you get leaders with passion, not leaders who just like an opportunity, leaders with a title. Just people who really want to do what they want to do. So like here at UWC SA, we have something called like Africa Week. So people just are really passionate about Africa and want to produce something that creates a love and an idea for our continent. So just whatever they want to do, they can do it because the school provides a platform. So cutting back on all formalities, just giving them a space to speak or to perform or to dance, whatever they want to do. I think that would make your small wins much easier to achieve.
It's so true what you say, Abigail. Sometimes as adults helping to lead student leadership, we just need to get out of the way and allow you some opportunity. It's a good reflection for all adults on the call. Neela, would you like to continue?
I'm sorry, it's not letting me raise my hand on the meeting for some reason. But one thing I just wanted to add is that I think an important thing about student leadership, especially developing effective student leadership programs, is recognizing the fact that it is always evolving. And you know, a lot of our student leadership, at least here at UWC Dillajan, is council based. So we have different councils that take care of different things, as well as also the peer listener system that's been mentioned at Adriatic and Atlantic as well. And I think it's recognizing that those councils do not have to be set in stone. For instance, this year we've developed a new disciplinary council because we realized that we wanted students to be more involved in that part of our school's administration and how disciplinary action at our school was run. And that's something that's it's been discussed for the past 2 years, and that's a new program that we've started. So also recognizing that it needs to be flexible, and that just because we have a student council, the student council can't account for everything. So being able to delegate and finding enthusiastic students that are passionate and willing and able to create new programs at any time, and helping them to coordinate that is a really, really important thing, I think, about having an effective student leadership program.
Absolutely, Neela. Thank you so much. Sarah, did you want to add in?
I think in terms of how we channel community leadership opportunities, it's really evident here at UWC East Africa Arusha. Like every week we have cultural nights for different people representing their nations. And it's really nice because it really allows you to challenge your perspectives of that culture and that nation. It allows you to really connect with the people that you go to school with. And additionally, like other people mentioned, here at UWC East Africa, we also have peer support groups. And actually a CCA program called a CAS program called Peer Mentor, where we can learn how to basically mentor our peers if they do have issues with if they do have concerns about their well-being. And yeah, I think that's a really great way that we can channel our personal communities into a UWC situation.
Chelsea, they are filling you with ideas. You'll have no excuses not to go away with this, with everything you need. Julie, what else can you recommend to Chelsea? And then we'll go to Helen.
I'm sorry, I can't turn on my camera because my Wi-Fi is bad. So I also don't know if this has already been said, but I do think when you are starting up a student leadership initiative, or student leadership team, that one very important thing I think was already said is about accountability of leaders. And I think to avoid miscommunication within student council, but also within student body and staff, is to make sure that you have one communication channel in which all decisions or what is shared between staff and students by staff and student council, everything is shared in one type of way. So for example, in my school, we have one student built a website on which all these communications are going through. So I think that is very important to avoid miscommunication, because I think that's one of the largest issues that we so that's my advice.
Helen, did you want to jump in?
Okay, thank you. So I think when it comes to leadership and learning as a whole, it's about 3 elements: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And I think this is what happens in our campus a lot. So when we do, for example, just take college council, for example. So we do our own things. We decide on which problems we want to solve, and that is autonomy. We know we can decide for ourselves. And second is mastery. It is when after like several months, we have accomplished a project. We know that we have done something, a result. And that's like, I have mastered some skills, I have made some progress, and that's also important. And finally, it's purpose. And that is when you like have people initiating something, they need to know what they are aiming at. It is for, is it for sustainability? Is it for peace? They gotta know like, why are they doing this? And with these 3 elements together, one can be very motivated and creative when they're like leading people or making progress. And next is about collective leadership. Leadership is never the role of one person. It's always when you distribute this leadership to everyone, that every member can be a leader on its own. They can be a good influence. They can be discussing things they are interested in. In that way, this whole structure of like leadership is built, I guess.
Thank you, Helen. We're hitting toward the end of our time, but we've got one last question in the chat, and it's a really lovely one, actually about 2. But if you've got a political or religious conflict in your community, is there any advice from our panelists on how to stay motivated to address something that's really challenging, such as that's a big challenge that you're trying to lead through? Anyone have any experiences they want to share on that?
Hello. Well, I'd like to say something on this. And well, in our campus, we do have, of course, a diversity of people, and we have people who come from different religious and political backgrounds. So people who are Islam, who are Christian, are the majority of the people. And we do offer opportunities for people to continue exploring their religion. So people are given the opportunity to go to mosques and to go to church and so forth. But what I really love about what we did was in UWC Day, the day when we celebrated UWC for what it is, we held different workshops that helped people to get engaged in different things. So one of those workshops that we did have was a religious tolerance workshop and a political tolerance workshop, whereby people had different presentations, and people would go from one workshop to another and learn about different things. So for example, for our political tolerance workshop, we did something known as broken telephone, where like one message was passed from one person to another up to the end of the group, and just how information can pass on, and how different things can be added or removed, and just how that chain of communication can work as. And we did something known as I'm sorry, I forgot what it is, but when you do I agree, I somewhat agree, neutral, and so forth. And we had different political questions where people were able to talk about the political agendas in their country. So things such as, I think that in my country, we don't have free and fair elections. So some people agree and some people disagree. And after the game is finished, or during in between the games, people get to talk about their countries and what goes on. So for example, personally, I got to learn more about how Belarus is, because well, I've never really met someone who's from Belarus who's outside of UWC, and I got to know how Syria functions. And I just thought that as we get to know each other's different political states, we also get to see the similarities as well as the differences that are there, and we're able to build a sort of tolerance because we're able to know more about what's going on in our countries. We also did a religious workshop where we saw a different video which was teaching us about how to stay away from different stereotypes, especially when it comes to religion, such as connecting Islamic activities with terrorism and so forth. And just these workshops get us to ask different questions and for us to get the answers. It doesn't necessarily have to be the right or wrong answer, but just having the opportunity to ask a question and knowing that it's a safe space, and you can be able to get an answer that is satisfactory probably to your question. And I think that that is very important, especially because we did this activity in the beginning of the semester when there were new students, especially the first years. And I think that this was very important, especially in creating a safe space to have these types of conversations and just to cultivate a sense of like unity and respect, especially because these are some of the places which are very sensitive, especially with people who come from religious backgrounds, you know. And yeah, I just think that in one of the ways to just solve these situations is just about talking about it, asking questions about it, cultivating a safe space if possible. And I think one of the things that made this as effective as it was the fact that people moved in small groups. So having a small group of people come into a space where they can talk about all the questions that they have, and concerning politics, concerning religion, concerning gender inequality. And yeah, I just think that was amazing and very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Aika. What would you like to put in our last word before we close off our webinar today?
I would love to. So just continuing on what Aika said, commenting a little bit more about what you can do as a student leader. So I would suggest that when you approach such uncomfortable situation, you need to be very well prepared and to have planned what to do. Like almost every step needs to be well planned because you want to avoid any uncertainties. You want to research beforehand on different perspectives to be prepared. And most importantly, you're creating a platform for different opinions to meet each other, and you are navigating the conversation. So it's not you who is trying to impose your own opinion or trying to rule over the discussion, it's you facilitating it. So I think it's very important to trying to have a neutral stance on it, and permitting all voices to be heard, and trying to nurture a conversation, not a conflict. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Wara. And thank you to all of our panelists. If you have access on Zoom to the reactions at the bottom of the screen, I encourage you to send your love to our panelists for all of their inspiring words today. As we close out our webinar, promotional video is going to come on the screen to be able to show you a little bit more about what a UWC experience is like. If you would like to send your appreciation to the panelists specifically, you can write that into the chat. Thank you so much for joining us today. All right, thank you so much, everyone. And please do join us at future webinars. We're going to be talking about the outdoor education programs that are fantastic here at UWC Schools and Colleges. Our next webinar is about English language acquisition for academic success. So we invite and encourage you all to join us in the future. And thank you again to all of our fantastic panelists. We hope to see you the next time. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good afternoon.